Welcome to Couples Becoming Intentional. I'm Carrie.
I am John.
And here at Couples Becoming Intentional, we want to equip you with different tools and resources so that you can live intentional lives with those that you love to leave a legacy that lasts. We are talking today about an article that just popped up kind of in our arena of life, and it shocked us. We agree with a lot of it. And
I don't know if we agree with it. I just found it interesting.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a different episode. So usually we have a question that just like whatever fun. This one sparked curiosity. I sent it to Carrie's way and she's like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, let's do an episode about it.
Yes. So we'll link the full article down in the show notes for you guys, but it is a question. The article is in the form of a question, which is great. It is, how and why do American couples argue? It's so fascinating.
So Carrie, before you read the article, what did you think was like the number one answer?
Okay, so how and why do American couples argue? Right when you sent that to me and I read the title, I was like, this is fascinating. We'll get into a little of the things that I was like, that's really surprising. I would think that what I've been told a good chunk of my life is that the number one reason why people get divorced is communication, and number two is finances. So it doesn't surprise me that couples argue. We argue. Everybody argues. It's kind of a red flag if you've never had a fight with your people in your life, because that means you're maybe not speaking in love and truth when things go against, or when you are hurt or go against your corporal beliefs, almost like if you have a conviction against something. There are going to be times in our life where we do have delightful disagreements.
That is one way to put it.
So that was, I was just more fascinated of what like a secular site had to say about it.
Or, debates, because it's a debate because you got to argue your own point, right? I hate when people say that. Anyways, so when I first saw the article, it popped up on my my news email that I get once a day, so that I can just stay in tune of what's going on in the world. Anyways, I thought for sure it was going to be money, because I thought like, okay, money is one of those things that people always argue about. Like, no, I don't want to spend money on that. Or why did you spend money on your hobby?
Right.
Like when we have a car payment due next week. And so what's that look, Carrie?
I feel like that's an argument we've had recently.
Have we?
Maybe not.
I don't think so.
In my mind.
Maybe maybe it is an argument that she thought we would have. I was using fun money for my hobby, Carrie. So
no problem there.
It is part of the budget. Anyways, so when we read the article, they have it later on of like what topics couples actually argue about. And Carrie was along the line, was right in the way that like the number one thing Americans argue about is the tone of voice or their attitude.
Which is communication. Yes.
It's
but this
aspect.
Is like
they broke down.
Exactly.
They broke down communication.
Yes, they did. And I think that was the thing that really surprised me was, most people in America actually argue based off of their tone or the attitude that they bring into that conversation.
Right. Because like, anytime you're like, why did you do that? And you're automatically like judging someone's motive. When you ask a why question, it's like cutting down of like, that doesn't make sense to me. That was wrong. You're like prejudging the situation. Where if you come with it with a open-ended question of like a who, what, when, where, having that curiosity of like what other people's motives are without getting down to like saying that your motive is wrong. You almost have like a natural curiosity of like what they're doing. And so I think that is a big thing of like people are already prejudging motives of their spouse. So the number two, which is money, which is like we expected that. Number 3 is communication styles. So it's yeah. So how can we cultivate better communication? And I think it comes back to asking those clarifying questions.
I think that's been one of the things, and we preface this article with John and I are in no means perfect by any means. We both grew up with way different communication styles just in our home, and
different argument styles.
argument styles. And the other thing too is that I think one of the biggest things that to go off of what John was talking about before, we've worked on eliminating the word why out of our vocabulary when it comes to arguments and getting, or like when somebody does something that we're kind of taken off guard about or we weren't expecting, we're removing that word, because what we've noticed, and even if you kind of just do some like thinking back into your own life, when you do something that maybe was your first time you ever did something, or you did something new and it was really like nerve-wracking for you, and then all of a sudden somebody says to you, why'd you do that? Your immediate response is a guard is built up to you because you feel like you're going to be rejected. And ultimately, we as people, we don't want to be rejected. That's like a common wound that a lot of us have growing up, is that we will do everything we can to not be rejected. And so we've really worked on eliminating that word because of the barrier that it puts up, because we, in our marriage and even just in the relationships that you have with other people, we want to be building a bridge to get to know somebody rather than building a barrier to really like put somebody off and build up our walls and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the big things that has really supported us in our marriage. So instead of asking, why'd you do that? Which is like so easy and a part of our culture to be able to do, we ask, like, what inspired that idea? Or can you tell me more about this decision? Or what were you thinking when you made that decision? That one's even kind of a little not so great.
Well, I think it's like trying to understand their motives without like casting judgment on it. And so, yeah, ask those questions of like, what goal was this going to like provide? Like, and if they're like, well, nothing. And so when you ask those questions, they realize, oh, I didn't have altruistic motives. And so they're like, oh, I can see how that kind of rubbed you the wrong way. I'm sorry I did that. And so rather than you argue about it, like they come to the realization themselves.
Correct.
And I mean, we say this and we realize, oh, right, I do this already. And like also, if an argument comes up, I think
when arguments come up,
if hopefully it's less and less as you grow together. I think that's just as you become a Christian, right? You grow. And I think just as you personally grow, I think you as a couple should grow, or in your community, because this is not necessarily communication is not just a couple thing, right? And I think there is a better way of arguing. Like, we don't raise our voice. We don't play the victim card where it's like, oh, woe is me. You hurt me. Like, which is all true. But then you're only like, that is your perspective now. It's like, you're going to continually play that out. And then you start believing that like everything is out to get you. Everything is going to hurt you, or people are trying to attack you because you're not letting them pour into you. So yeah, they say like in this article, they say like, how do couples argue? And it's like raising your voice, giving the silent treatment, swearing or name calling, crying. These are just not like great tools.
No, and this is how, and I think a big part of this whole entire conversation is a lot of times we were never taught how to communicate well and how to actually like fight fairly, or to fight for our marriages or our relationships rather than against. Because if anyone growing up had parents who argued, whether you come from a household where parents still love each other, you grew up in a household of divorce, whatever that really looked like, more than likely you saw your parents argue, Or if you didn't, they went into their bedroom, locked the door, and then you just hear like little bits of yelling and screaming. And so that's why like it's super key when we look at these different things of like the number one thing being your tone of voice. It is coming to the situation with, this is not about me. This is how do we, as people who love each other, friendships, relationships, coworkers, how do we come to a common ground agreement of where we move forward with hurt or with disagreements specifically? And I think that's the key, because when you shape your mindset to be, I care about this person more than winning an argument, or I care about us doing well as a couple or as a relationship, rather than me boosting my ego because I was right. That's when you really start to have really incredible conversations and enlightenments, because you're able to be closer with your person that you're having this disagreement with or communication with. You're able to be on the same page and on the same side, rather than being enemies against each other. You're coming alongside and partnering with them to find a common goal and solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, as
there
it
you
were.
Go. I was gonna say,
that's
I'm
the saying.
I see what you're going here.
Yeah, that was the saying I'm trying to get to. Yeah. So like, it's understanding like, right, like the number thing that that Americans argue about is their tone of voice, which is like, I was blown away. I didn't expect that to be.
I wasn't either.
But then like you look at like, okay, so imagine as it were a pie chart. 7% of communication, if you want to like draw this on your whatever,
or just
mentally, or you could physically draw it, then it could be a reminder to you of 7%. So a really tiny section is the words you use. 38% is the tone. So that'll be the pace of speech. If you're like, the pace,
the level of voice,
the level, the pitch, that's called the pitch of like, if it's elevated, people are going to automatically be defensive. So, or if it's really fast, people that are slow to process are going to be defensive. Speaking as a fellow processor, if people are talking fast to me, I can't process it. And so it'll take me 2-3 times for me to understand, like, oh, that's what you meant. Like, okay. And so I often was like, wait, what did you say? Not that I didn't hear them. It's that I was still processing what they're saying. And then 55%.
So more than half of the way you communicate something
is your body language. Yeah. And so like when you have your arms crossed.
I was going to say my arms crossed.
Or if you have your hands like under your chin, like if your hands are crossed, that's conveying that you're already in a defensive position.
Or you're not even looking them in the eye.
Not looking in the eye.
Or on your phone.
Yep. Because you're distracted. Like that shows that you're distracted, that you're not going to like prioritize the other person. If you're not looking them in the eye, you're showing that you're not listening to what they're saying. If you have your hands underneath your under your head, like supporting your head, you're showing you're bored. Like, this doesn't mean anything to me. I just want to go
be somewhere else,
do something else. Like, how fast can I get through this?
Right.
And so like, if we can have an open posture, and like, there are things that can help with this. So they say in coach school, we were taught that like, if you struggle with your body posture, practice standing with your hands open, because it signifies openness, right? Like, you want to be open to your people that you love, right? And so if you do that, you're more likely to receive better. Like, you will not automatically be offended. You won't automatically be casting prejudgment upon the other person. If you can stand there saying like, hey, I receive this, like, you just have a better attitude too.
Right. And you're coming to the argument, or not the argument, you're coming to the conversation. Let's say that for this circumstance, you're coming to the conversation with a humble heart, Because when you have your defense mode up in your body language, you're coming with a more prideful spirit of he hurt me or she hurt me and I was right and they were wrong and they need to make it right, rather than looking at the situation and being like, what fault did I cause, as big or small, and owning 100% of what I did.
Right. Because like when we have an argument or like a disagreement, more than likely you contributed in some way.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody's fault is 100%. Like,
correct.
Not one person is 100% their fault.
Mm-hmm.
So like find, even if it is that 2-3%, which is unlikely, find that 2-3% and own 100% of that.
Yes.
Because like you still had like maybe something ticked, like triggered something within them.
Yep.
Because like, I mean, we all have things that will trigger us, or things that will like, ooh, I've been in this situation before. This situation did not end poorly. So automatically I'm going to have a negative attitude about it. And so maybe you contributed to that. And so that's just understanding of like, that's understanding how God created your significant other. For Carrie, like if I say to Carrie, like, hey, Carrie, you're not enough. You're not needed. She is going to go back to her childhood wound, her childhood, like, belief, her negative belief that she wasn't needed, that she, like, people could have done without her. And the same for me, where if someone says your presence isn't valued or your presence isn't needed, then I'm automatically hurt. Even if like it could be verbally, it could be
just in the actions. We're not saying people are coming up to us and coming up to John and saying your presence doesn't matter. Like,
right.
We're not saying that. That's not, people aren't coming up to you and saying that. It's for, like with John, if there's a situation that happens where he feels excluded or he feels not welcome or like was disinvited or just different things like that, that hits him to the core of, this goes back to like, well, this was right. I'm not valued. I'm not worthy, and nobody cares about me, and I'm not needed, or not needed. That's more me, but like my presence doesn't matter. Like that's where he reverts back to.
Or like my opinion doesn't matter.
Yes.
And so like when people are not listening to me, that is the most like, like I have to remind myself that like Jesus still loves me.
Yeah.
My presence matters to Jesus. Jesus wants me.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, we don't find our value in other people.
Right.
They still make life worthy, right? Like as much as we like love Jesus, Jesus is all that matters. We still need to learn how to love others.
Yes.
And so like you don't exclude the second half of the command because it's just easier to love Jesus, which I don't know. I don't know about you, but like that is still difficult to just love Jesus with everything. But, like there is a second part of the command of loving others, loving your neighbors, loving like where we said before of like loving your immediate family, because those are the first people in your neighborhood.
Right.
Yes, it's much easier to say, well, I'm going to be my own little world. I'm going to create a moat around my household. This is my castle. Don't intercede because like this is my paradise, which also conveys the fact that you think you're perfect, which is also a blind spot. But yeah, so it's like, I don't know where I'm going with this. John is rambling, which is also how I talk.
Okay, so to bring it back, welcome to Raw Unfiltered. Can you give, I would love to wrap this up with more like tactical, like what do I do from here type of situation. So the tactical.
What is it?
The importance, and now it's the how. This is how we share things in life.
Thinking of how you give a sermon.
You give illustration.
You have the illustration. You have our expiation or the what is it called? The
something from the text.
Yeah, you extrapolate.
There you go.
From the text, and now here is your application.
Yes. So can you share, this is on the fly, can you share 2 tips for people when they go into more difficult conversations with the people that they love? What would be 2 tips?
I think understanding
Number 1.
who they are.
Okay.
Like, so there are different there are different kinds of
People.
personalities outside, and so understand like the easiest way of like defining who someone is using DISC, DISC. So a D person is going to be more direct. They're going to say like, "Hey, this is the way it is. This is how I see it. This is their perspective." Yes. I people
are more influential. They're more extroverted people. They want to be with people all the time. What they say has influence. Yes. Annie F. Downs is a huge I. Like, everything has to be fun. That is their motivation.
Yes.
C personality. I know. I'm going
cautious. I know you went out of order. You threw me out of loop. No, C's are cautious. They are people that are like, well, let's think about this before we do. They're very task oriented, just like D people. I people and S people are people oriented. So C people, you'll see that like they want to get to the task, they want to finish the task, but they want to think about it before. Where direct people are going to do the task and then think about it.
Yes. And then S people, so a little bit out of order. I had John do C because he's more of a C.
I'm more of a S. You're more of a C.
We're both S people. So S is like your steady, consistent, very relational kind of people. They care more about the people sitting in front of them than the task or the problem at hand. They just want it pretty much at all costs. They want to make sure that relationships are restored. So we'll do a whole podcast episode talking about that. But John was saying that was one of his number 1 tips, is just to really understand and know who the person is that you're talking to, because depending on who you're talking to, you're going to actually come to that conversation better equipped to serve them well in a language that they understand.
Right.
Okay. Number 2, what's your next tip for when people are in more difficult conversations?
Have a posture of openness. Realize that like their word, your word are not infallible, right? You're not going to be 100% right all the time. So understand like, okay, like I could have said something wrong, or if they are bringing something that they've observed or that they're bringing to you, like take it with a pinch of salt, right? As the saying is, because like maybe 80% of it is right. Like focus on the 80%, not focus on the 20% that they got wrong. They're like, whoa, that's not me. Because then you can really easily just say, well, they were wrong in this part. So what the whole entire thing, what they said isn't accurate. Like I don't need to learn. I don't need to change myself because I don't do that. Like I know I don't do that. Focus on the 80% of it that was right, because like you'll become a more Christ-like figure. Like you'll become more like Jesus if you can focus on the things that people observe in your life.
Okay. Love this. Okay. I've got 2 more tips.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap it up with these 4. So another tip is going back to what John said about just the way we perceive information, of the text only, the way we say it, and then our posture behind it. Fight in person, or like have these conversations in person or over FaceTime. Don't do it through text. Don't just do a voice text, because understanding somebody's posture and like getting all 100% of the piece of the pie is actually going to be very, very key. So if all possible, being knee to knee, toe to toe, having a conversation. And what a tip I was actually advised on is, if it's a couple, having physical contact when you're having these heated arguments, to remind yourself that you love each other, you're on the same side. That's going to be something that you want to do. And then my last tip, and this is something we've honestly like had to work through recently, is find a good time to have this this conversation. 10 o'clock at night when we're both exhausted and we're both ready to go to bed, probably not a good time.
We're not going to fight fairly.
No, we're not. Our energy is pretty depleted at that point, and we're not going to fight fairly. So maybe it's for us, it's like time, not with our kids around. We do want them to see what good, healthy conversations look like. And they do when we have like little argument or not arguments, but like little.
Usually it's in the car.
Yeah.
That we have like conversations.
Yes, a little bit more. And they're hearing, but they're hearing it in a healthy way. And there's not like we're throwing things at people. That's not what we're doing. So having a good time to actually have the conversation. And even if it's, hey, later today, or like I'll send John a text of like, I want to talk through X, Y, and Z with you later today. Do you have capacity to have this conversation? And like actually prepping each other to come to that conversation. So we're not like in the heat of the moment screaming, because I'm prone to just yelling at each other, me yelling at John about something he did or did not do that hurt me. Instead, I'm like giving myself already preparatory time to like decompose and come to the conversation with a humble spirit, rather than being like really elevated in the heat of the argument still. So those are our 4 tips as you go about navigating.
I will also say,
conversations.
I'll say on Carrie's tip number 1 of like having in person.
That was your tip number 1. Oh, that was number 3.
Number 3.
Yes,
sorry.
You're good.
Number 3 of have it in person. Like, yeah, try to have the initial conversation in person. It's okay if you are a processor.
Yes.
And you like, you know what? I kind of understand where you're coming from, but to continue in this conversation, it's okay if you need to move to like text messages so that you're able to really comprehend where the other person is coming from. That's more so of a processor who is more of introverted, and coupled with someone that is more direct, someone that is that can speak fast. I haven't had to use that tip because Carrie is she's not going to bite my head off.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. You used to be
I used to be.
Yeah. But I haven't had to use that. So
bonus tip then.
Yeah.
This is what has been super helpful if you are in relationship with somebody who's a processor, is give 5 minutes of silence.
Be comfortable in silence.
I hate it.
Yeah.
John, like I'll ask him a question and he'll be processing. The worst thing that I did for him was like, I'll ask the question again. Like, did you hear me? And he'll be like, I'm processing. And I'm like, process faster.
And it's because if you break the silence,
yes,
you pop my
thinking bubble
of like, okay, A equals B equals C.
Yeah.
And then she'll pop it and I'll go, okay, now I need to go back to A.
Yes.
Which is going to be, and then so it's going to take longer.
Exactly. So if you are in relationship with people who are processors, just be comfortable in silence. It has taken me a really long time as somebody who probably by the time he already tells me his feelings, I've way moved on. I'm already like solving tomorrow's and next year's problems. That's just how my brain operates. But allowing that time for space and 5 minutes is a long time. So find something to preoccupy yourselves for that time, or just sit in silence, or just pray for you to be quiet.
And I've rarely used 5 minutes for me, because of how I am. Like there is a mental fog almost. Mm-hmm. And so like I'll be thinking, I'm like, okay, this is what she's saying. Oh wait, I have this other task to do. I have laundry to do. Oh, and then there's dishes. Oh wait, Carrie brought something to me. Okay, what was she saying? Okay, then this. Okay, that. Mm-hmm. Do I need to solve her problems? Is she looking for me to solve her problem? That's also a great question to ask your spouse, of like, hey, that sucks. Do you want solutions?
Or do you want me just to listen?
Or do you just want me to listen?
Yes. Okay. That's where we're going to end things. Rapid fire.
Wow. Rapid fire.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
You have rapid fire?
I do have rapid fire.
Okay.
What is your favorite fast food restaurant?
Fast food restaurant.
Mm-hmm. You're not going in and sitting. You're eating it in the car.
Probably McDonald's then.
Oh my gosh.
Or Chick-fil-A.
Ooh, okay. I would say McDonald's. I love me a good McDonald's. Okay. And then what is a place that if somebody was visiting your hometown, where would you take them to go visit? One place. So my hometown is Appleton. If I was taking a new friend to Appleton, I would take them to the restaurant Sap because it is superior to any restaurant in all of Appleton. Steak and eggs, baby.
You're biased.
I grew up there.
Yeah, so you're biased.
Yeah, that's the point of the question. It's a hometown.
I don't know.
Okay, if you did Kakana, where would you take them?
Dick's.
Oh, yes.
Dick's
that is
Drive-In.
an ice cream place 2 blocks from our house, which is very dangerous.
It is. But if it was like Pimbine,
Mm-hmm.
probably like Patty's Platter, which used to be Mary's Place.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. It's a breakfast place.
It is very good. See, look at us. Both of us breakfast. And then last rapid fire question. Where is the best burger you've ever had? This is all food related. Clearly, I'm hungry.
You just had lunch. Brick House in De Pere.
Best burger. I cannot tell you where it is. But when I was 9 years old, I don't know if I was 9, it was back then, I had a Juicy Lucy burger in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. I literally couldn't even tell you what
Outside
city we were in.
Albuquerque.
I don't even know. We were with my grandma. So I honestly, you guys, I have no idea. It was the best Juicy Lucy burger I've literally ever had. And if you don't know what that is, that means the cheese is inside of the meat. Best burger I've ever had.
And it makes it juicy.
I have literally no idea where it was from. The best I've ever had.
Somewhere in New Mexico.
Somewhere in the desert of New Mexico.
Maybe someone knows where it is.
Maybe somebody does. So if you do, send me an email or a DM. And until next time, we'll see ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Couples Becoming Intentional. As always, if you have a question that you would like us to answer here on the podcast, you can go ahead and send us an email at jcvhouse@gmail.com, or you can send me a DM over on Instagram at Carrie Daco. We'd love to be able to answer and feature you on here on the podcast. And as always, if there is somebody in your life who would benefit from this episode, feel free to go ahead and send them the link. And if you love this content, we'd love to be able to hear from you. So go ahead and leave us a review over on Apple Podcast.
Until next time, we love you and we appreciate you.
See you guys.
Bye.